Wearing stitched clothing is prohibited while in Ihram during Hajj or Umrah. Is there any wisdom in wearing ordinary sheets in this state?
The first fundamental point to keep in mind is this principle.
فعل الحكيم لا يخلو عن الحكمة.
As the saying goes, no action of one who is wise is devoid of wisdom. Now, the first and foremost thing is that the central principle of our religion is that every act of a servant, his living, his dying, should be solely for Allah Almighty. This is the core foundation of our religion. The meaning of Islam is to submit one's neck in obedience and dedicate oneself to Allah Almighty. In the Holy Quran, it is stated,
قل إن صلاتي ونسكي ومحياي ومماتي لله رب العالمين.
Say, indeed my prayer and my sacrifices and my living and my dying are all for Allah alone, Lord of all the worlds. Thus, a bondman's entire life and death are for Allah Almighty. When we reflect on the rulings of our religion, particularly the acts of worship, we find that they echo this principle of living and dying solely for Allah Almighty in various ways. For example, our sleep is for us, of course, but when we rise from it, it is often for work, livelihood, and sustenance. Now, whether we sleep at 4 o'clock at night or at 3, the command of Allah Almighty turns towards us to rise for Fajr Salah. What was originally our sleep meant for ourselves is now sacrificed for Allah Almighty.
MashaAllah.
Okay. Similarly, take the example of Zohar. We leave our work and worldly engagements to perform it. At Isha, we leave our family and other worldly matters aside. So what does Salah become? In Salah, through giving various sacrifices at different times, we demonstrate that this part of our life is also for Allah Almighty, and that part is also for Allah Almighty, and this too is for Allah Almighty, and that too is for Allah Almighty. We observe fasting. While we are eating, we are commanded to abstain. We do not drink a single drop of water, nor take a single morsel of food. We say, Ya Allah, I have left this eating and drinking for you. Even until a minute before iftar, we do not eat. Otherwise, we could eat if we wished. Now, this food and drink becomes for Allah Almighty. Whether it is salah or fasting, through these acts we demonstrate that our living and dying, our entire life, is for Allah Almighty. In ordinary life, our basic routines, eating, drinking, and sleeping, are essential. One cannot live without eating, cannot survive without drinking, and cannot continue without sleep. In these two acts of worship, we have already dedicated these routines to Allah Almighty. The fourth aspect, which is very important in a person's life, is their clothing. In our everyday attire, we have full discretion. We may wear whatever we wish, in whatever color or style we prefer. There are a few conditions or restrictions, but beyond those, the scope of choice is very wide. However, during Hajj, a person manifests their commitment to Islam and Iman, that everything of theirs, their living, their life, is for Allah Almighty through the act of wearing the Ihram. Even if one is wealthy and can wear the finest branded clothes, tailored by the best tailors or boutiques, projecting grandeur and style, this act demonstrates that they are setting all worldly pride aside for Allah Almighty. But then the command comes, you shall not go beyond this boundary around the holy Kaaba, for example, the miqat for Afaki, without wearing Ihram. Therefore, no matter how expensive or branded one's worldly clothing may be, one must remove it and simply wear 2 plain sheets. That is it. In this way, a person relinquishes all personal preferences, all brands, all costly attire, and changes their clothing in obedience to the command of Allah Almighty. This demonstrates that my living is for Allah Almighty, my life and all my actions are for Allah Almighty, and my likes and dislikes are for Allah Almighty. Thus, one aspect of wisdom in this practice is precisely this. The second point is that the clothing of Ihram is clearly the simplest possible attire.
Correct.
Consider this. Could there be any clothing simpler than this? Nothing else comes close. This is the simplest. In other words, during Hajj, Allah Almighty has prescribed clothing of utmost simplicity. Simplicity of a bondman is beloved to Allah Almighty, and this attire serves as a form of training for the bondman in adopting simplicity in life.
Correct.
The third point is that this clothing is worn by the rich and the poor alike, by city dwellers and villagers, by those from Makkah as well as those coming from the farthest corners of the world. Dressing all Hajj pilgrims in the same attire demonstrates practical equality among them. In this way, it also becomes a manifestation of equality. The fourth point is that after death, the bondman is dressed in the same unstitched clothing, yes, as a shroud. One is not buried in a branded, tailored, or designer suit. Instead, the deceased is wrapped in these simple sheets. The number of sheets for men is 3, and for women it is 5 or fewer if that suffices for the purpose of the shroud. The key point is that the clothing is unstitched. Thus, during Hajj, when a bondman approaches the presence of Allah Almighty wearing unstitched clothing, it serves as a reminder that another occasion will come when one must return to Allah Almighty.
ارجعي إلى ربك.
Return to your Lord. And on that day too, one will go in unstitched clothing.
The concept of death is fully encompassed here.
Indeed, the entire notion of death is present within it. When we go to the Holy Kaaba, we say, we are going to the house of Allah Almighty. This means that we are approaching the court of Allah Almighty, and we do so wearing unstitched clothing. And as for the Holy Kaaba,
ارجعي إلى ربك.
return to your Lord. In this way, it serves as a reminder of death. These are some of the clear wisdoms that can be learnt and understood from wearing the Ihram. When a bondman reflects on these wisdoms while performing Hajj, believe me, the Hajj becomes a truly Hajj Mabrur.
What a profound point, subhanAllah.
Because the foundation of our actions is our thoughts. Now, if in our thoughts there is nothing regarding our Ihram, then we will return just as we went. However, if we enter into Ihram with these thoughts and with these wisdoms, by the time we return, our thinking will have changed, and this Hajj will be Mabrur, that is accepted. At times, Ihram itself becomes a means of reaching a Hajj Mabrur.
Subhanallah. And then for however many days one remains in Ihram, sometimes one feels as if it is very uncomfortable and the body can no longer endure.
It is also a confrontation with the nafs.
Yes, so when all these aspects are present,
confronting the nafs is also part of it. And this is one of the most important aspects, that a person protects their nafs from its desires. Protecting the nafs from its desires is itself a practical exercise. The heart may wish to wear another garment thinking it is too difficult, but one must wear the prescribed one, wear it as it is. One must oppose the nafs, oppose it and keep opposing it. Now, if a person continues to practice this opposition to the nafs, even a little afterwards, this is taqwa, that is piety.
subhanAllah.
This is taqwa. Its consequence is wilaya, that is closeness to Allah Almighty. And according to the holy verse,
أعدت للمتقين.
its outcome is also that paradise has been prepared for the righteous.